Hi there, my name is Karen Fabian and I'm the founder of Bare Bones Yoga. Thanks for taking a minute to watch my YouTube video. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I'm a yoga teacher and I focus on the anatomy, the anatomical aspects of the yoga practice. And all that I offer really is focused on helping teachers understand the key aspects of anatomy so that they can share it in understandable ways with their students. I know that learning anatomy can be really overwhelming. I've heard over the years from hundreds of teachers who continue to struggle with making sense of this highly complex subject. So in my programs and my services and my offerings, I really work to hone in on the key things that you need to know as a yoga teacher and not only help you learn them, but like I said, help you figure out ways to share it in understandable ways with your students. And so in today's video, what we're going to go over are some anatomically based cues for a couple of poses that are in the triangle series. So I'm going to come at this from downward facing dog. And these are probably postures that you teach regularly and maybe you just haven't really thought about the anatomy of them. So let's kind of start out here. I'm going to start with the left foot forward so that I can face you. And I'll come into triangle. So in triangle pose, let's look at just some of the basics here. So in triangle, the hips are in abduction, which means they're moving away from the midline, as are the shoulders, right? So my shoulders are open, so that's external rotation, but they're also abducted. Now, you're not really going to use these terms, abduction, in your teaching, but it's important for teachers to understand what's happening anatomically. The external rotation part, though, might be something you say. So you might say, open your shoulders as a cue in triangle pose. And that technically refers to that external rotation. Now, one of the things I want you to remember is that the external rotators of the shoulder, which are found on the back of the body, so the teres minor and the infraspinatus, which connect the scapula to the humerus, they tend to be kind of weak in people. So you'll generally see something that looks kind of like this. So you want to really encourage what we typically would say in a class, roll the upper shoulder open. But remember, even this weight-bearing arm should be open as well. This one may be more at risk for turning in because it is the weight-bearing arm. So anything you can do to kind of bring more of this, so again, activating the muscles back here, to the posture, even as they are weighted on that lower arm, will be helpful. Now, this hip is in flexion and external rotation. This hip is in extension and kind of a little bit of both. It's not turned in, it's not turned out a lot, so it's kind of midway between the two. Now, because this hip is in external rotation, now, again, on the back of the body, we're looking to muscles like the quadratus femoris and the obturator muscles and the gemelli muscles to create that external rotation in that hip. Now, similar to the concern about this weight-bearing arm, there's some concern about this weight-bearing knee. And the typical thing you'll see is hyperextension, too much extension, in part because the body is weighted this way. So sometimes you can have people just bend their knee a little bit, and then as they bend this knee, if they take the hip back a bit, they'll create more contraction with those muscles back there, thus creating more external rotation. So the cue might be bend the front knee, tuck the tailbone, tuck the sitting bone toward the back heel, keep the front knee a little bit bent, engage the quadriceps, right, the extensor muscles of the knee, and, root to the floor, reach up, open your shoulders, all of that. So then from here, again, these are just ideas. You might have people come up and step the back foot in for something like a pyramid pose, forward fold. So here, once again, this lower knee is at risk of hyperextension, so you probably want to have people bend it a little bit. Here, both hips are internally rotating, right? So I'm not turning my feet out. My hips are internally rotating, inner thighs rolling back. So I'm using muscles like the gluteus medius, the anterior fibers, to create that internal rotation. And as I have people come into this forward fold, the hamstrings, right? So the hamstrings are, of course, behind, and they are the knee bender, the knee flexor. They're stretching in this posture. So that's, why many times you'll hear people say, hey, you can bend your front knee a little bit. So internal rotation, extension of the front leg and back leg, front leg weighted, back leg weighted, so there's balance between the two, and then the forward fold. Now to come into the twist, right, I like to have people use blocks. Has nothing to do with skill, has more to do with getting that extension in the spine. So you don't really want people to be coming into the twist from here. So having the block allows them to get their spine more into that kind of natural length. So we're always trying to reinforce, as long as the posture supports it, just the natural curvature of the spine, not asking them to flatten something that, just has this natural curve there. So here, I come up halfway, I keep those natural curves through the cervical and the thoracic and the lumbar. And then what I like to do is not focus so much on this back foot being turned out, to focus more on getting people rooted. So even for me, I have to kind of turn that back foot in a little bit more than what you might typically see taught, turning the foot out. Create that extension in the spine, and then this is your leverage arm. So you're trying to create, and actually why don't I do it the other way so you can see. You're trying to create that same opening through the shoulders you had in regular triangle, but at the same time, you're using muscles like your obliques to create twists through the thoracic spine, the rotatories muscles, which are really close to the spinal column, to create that rotation. And again, hips are internally rotating. So you could say to people, take the inner thighs back, right? You want them to leverage this bottom arm to press away, all that rotation through the midsection. Hips are back. Now, one thing to keep in mind, sometimes people lock down here. I just want you to think about it from the perspective of you're creating this rotation through the thoracic spine, and if you lock down here, sometimes it just kind of prevents that natural movement that will happen, and the natural movement being one hip higher than the other. There's nothing really wrong with that. I think that that's kind of an old cue where people used to think they have to keep both hips level. You can have one hip rise up. It's kind of the unintended consequence, not in a muscle compensation sort of way, that as you're twisting, your one hip will lift slightly. I would rather see people get that kind of natural movement than try to lock down. I mean, you can think about grounding through your feet, but as you get that rotation, if you find that right hip feels a little higher, that's fine. Take the inner thighs back and reach up. So those are some of the cues that you can use. So I'll just do one go around, integrating the cues as if I were teaching you in a class. So from downward facing dog, we'll just do the one leg. Step your left foot forward, come into triangle. Place the block behind your shin, under your shoulder, and begin to open both of your shoulders, right? Be careful that front knee isn't locked out. You could bend the front knee a little bit and tuck your left sitting bone towards your back heel. And then from there, lift up, step your back foot in. You can take your front foot a little bit to the left if you want. You're going to forward fold down. If you've got a couple blocks, you can place them alongside your foot. And then just kind of find the right amount of weight in your front leg and your back leg so you're balanced down the middle. So it doesn't feel like you're too far forward or too far back. Take your inner thighs back. And then from there, grab your block, set it up under the shoulder, lift halfway up and create length, and then begin to root into your feet. Take your inner thighs back. Rotate through your thoracic spine, through your midsection. Take your arm up. Root down. Take a breath. And then release. So, I hope this has been helpful for you. If you like the idea of really understanding the anatomy behind the cues, I can share that this is a really powerful technique for teachers to blend both the knowledge of anatomy and blend that with what they say. You know, many times teachers are out there just teaching and just using phrases they picked up in training, which is fine, or using phrases they picked up when they went to somebody's class, but they don't really know the why behind it. Once you connect what you're saying with the anatomy behind it, it's a really powerful shift for teachers, because it brings you into, you know, a greater level of confidence, because you're saying things that you know rather than just repeating things that you were told. And that can be a really transformational shift for teachers and allow them to access not only just a greater sense of confidence, but feeling more comfortable in their body, feeling like they have a greater ability to answer student questions, and just overall have a bigger impact when they teach. So if you would like to learn more about this technique, I would highly encourage you to sign up for my signature program, which is the Blueprint Learning Program. Right now enrollment is closed, but you can get on the wait list, and I usually open enrollment once every month or once every 2 months. So I'll include the link for the wait list here. If you have any questions, just send me an email, Karen@barebonesyoga.com. Namaste.